So I have this friend. I'm a little bit worried about her. She just moved to a new city and started a great job. She's been doing the best she can to get to know as many people in her community as possible, but she feels kind of embarrassed that she has to constantly ask people to remind her of their name 2, 3, 20 times. You see, my friend, she has to give this big speech in front of like 1,000 people, and all the while fasting, which doesn't put anyone in a good mood, in a circumstance that does not feel unlike a reality TV show. After all, her debut is being broadcast live. She has been worrying and asking so many questions. Will her words resonate with people? Will they like her? Will they wonder why her sermon has absolutely nothing to do with the title that was published in all your printed schedules? She will stand at the large wooden podium alone, literally being more covered up than she ever has been in her life, drowning in a giant, non-breathable polyester white robe that is covered by a wool blanket also known as a talit. Despite this, she worries that she'll feel completely exposed. I know what you're thinking. Hey, didn't you just start a new job? Didn't you just move to a new city? Aren't you wearing a white robe? Okay, fine, whatever, you caught me. It seems like every time I write a sermon, something I write and rehearse to share with whatever community I'm with, thankfully it's this one, it turns out that I need to hear it just as much, if not more so, than anyone else, especially during the High Holy Days. I stressed and obsessed over what message I wanted to deliver today, and then after my second nightmare about this moment, I decided to embrace the discomfort and engage with the fear of missing the mark, of seeming naive, of the unknown, fear of failure. I was afraid I would stand here completely vulnerable, putting out my thoughts and feelings, ideas and hopes into the world, and sit down a short while from now, feeling as though I had just bared my soul to you. All of these thoughts I was experiencing were coming from a place of fear, but they were made all the worse when I refused to express that. It's kind of ironic that one should feel this way on Yom Kippur, seeing as how the whole purpose of the season is to reflect and spend time facing our fears, shortcomings, unfulfilled promises. It's a time in which we are meant to reset our internal standards we so often set too high, and to reconnect with our brokenness. Yom Kippur especially carves out a space for each of us to be able to say out loud, I am not perfect. To admit, I will never be perfect. And more than that, we do this in front of the whole community, a practice that challenges how we approach life throughout the rest of the year. This idea of embracing brokenness and vulnerability shines through in basically every aspect of Judaism. Our central narrative that shows up over and over and over and over is the Exodus, the story of our liberation from slavery in ancient Egypt. It provides powerful images of vulnerability. Each decree sent down by Pharaoh to oppress the Hebrew people broke our spirits more and more. Because of those injustices against us, we finally cried out, and God heard us. So often in our retelling of this story, we focus on God's greatness, for it was God, with a little help from Moses and perhaps a few effective community organizers, who were able to liberate the Israelites. We forget that it wasn't until this very moment, until God heard Israel's cry, that God put events into motion that would lead to Israel's freedom. For God to hear Israel's cry, Israel first had to cry. Without the act of asking for help, freedom would not have come. The same holds true for us. It took centuries of slavery and oppression for the Israelites to cry out for help. But even once they were freed, the journey in the wilderness stirred up all of this fear of the unknown in many of the Israelites. They thought it might be better to have stayed in Egypt instead of moving forward. They let the fear of change disenfranchise them to the point that they just accepted their lives as they were, despite the pain that they lived with. When we turn inward on Yom Kippur, and contemplate all our moments of personal vulnerability, we're being forced to cry out too, even if only to ourselves, to cry out for forgiveness, for help, for love. To be clear, I don't want you to think that I'm saying that you should turn to the first stranger you see next to you and reveal your deepest insecurities and your most precious dreams. That if that's your prerogative, go for it. But that is not my point here. It's not about revealing yourself to the people you don't yet know. It's about thoughtfully revealing yourself to the people you do know, and hopefully these people you love and trust, or at least want to very badly. Each of us, I'm sure, can recall a time when we didn't know how we were going to get through whatever it was that we were facing. Eventually, you may have taken the risk of telling someone you trusted, even though you were scared, and you found yourself finally able to start picking up the pieces. I am reminded of and inspired by a close friend's family. It was after my friend's third relapse with Hodgkin's lymphoma. She had just had a blood marrow transplant that her body was rejecting, and she was hospitalized for over 8 months. Her family was very small. It was pretty much just her parents and her sister. And during those 8 months, her parents and her sister decided to reduce the amount of hours they were working because they wanted one of the three of them to always be in the hospital room with her, even though for many of those months she was completely unconscious. Her mother expressed to one of her dear friends that had come to visit the hospital the consequences of this choice, of always one of them needing to be there, one they never, not even for a moment, regretted or questioned. And so, in order to help my friend's family stay up to date with medical bills and mortgages, a site was created on GoFundMe.com, a personal fundraising site which, for the most part, is full of people asking for help during their darkest times. You can even look for people asking for help near you, which I thought was really interesting, but people are asking for help in cancer treatment, in having a baby, in healing after loss. Not surprisingly, the amount raised by friends, family, and strangers surpassed what they thought was possible, and even more significantly, the messages that accompanied their donations told a story about their daughter's profound impact on others. They felt the love pour in from around the world, all because they opened up. Hopefully, many of us will never have to go through this. But for this family, their willingness to share what their needs were allowed them to be seen and to be supported. Think about how our own communities, families, and friends could support us if only we revealed our own struggles. Judaism teaches us that to be human is to engage in these kinds of difficult conversations, for it is through this process that we create human connection. As it turns out, humans are not mind readers. In her TED Talk on the power of vulnerability, researcher Brené Brown redefines how we understand the word vulnerability. She says what it actually means is to have the courage to be imperfect, of knowing you're not perfect and yet still believing that you are deeply worthy of love and belonging. It is the ability to feel connected to one another, to ourselves, and to God, by embracing the fact that in order to feel connection, one must be willing to take the risk of putting ourselves out there without knowing how or if we will be received. Our sacred texts encourage us to embrace our brokenness. In fact, brokenness is so core to our understanding of the world around us that the Kabbalists believe that the creation of the world directly resulted from the shattering of God's vessels of light. This is where we get the concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world. In the Kabbalist opinion, it's that these shards of light, these vessels that were full of the divine light, shattered, and the pieces scattered all over the world. And tikkun olam is the piece that we're supposed to look for those pieces of light, find them, and bring them together. So while today it may be used to refer to social action or social justice, it did originate as part of this creation myth. And we still take part in the process of collecting the light that's scattered around the world. By bringing that light back into visibility, by finding that piece of brokenness, the vessels are not intended to be mended or repaired. Rather, each shard of the vessel brings more goodness and more light into the world by itself, as a piece that is both broken and beautiful, and a peace that is also whole. Our hearts mimic this act of breaking, which resulted in the formation of our universe. Our sages teach that this is what makes us like the scattered shards, each of us broken, yet each of us also whole. In case I haven't sold you on this point yet, I want to share a few examples from our tradition about the need to embrace our vulnerabilities. The book of Psalms points to the necessity, it's not a judgment of whether it's a good or bad thing, but the necessity of a broken heart. Psalm 51:19 reads, Zivchei Elohim ruach nishbara, lev nishbar, v'nidkeh Elohim lo tivzeh. True sacrifice to God is a broken heart. God will not scorn a shattered or broken heart. This psalm tells us what we already know, but often don't practice, that in order to offer anything to God or to anyone else for that matter, our hearts must be broken and must be open. Without that, we aren't offering much at all. The psalm also teaches us that God will not say no to a broken heart, something that we are all probably hoping here as we sit in the sanctuary before the gates close tonight. Various other rabbinic texts reinforce the idea that to have a broken heart is to be human. It is a consequence of living with an open heart. Menachem Mendel of Katz, in studying the Ve'ahavta, a prayer you all know very well, asked what I find to be a very good question. He asked, why does the verse in Ve'ahavta say, and these words that I command you this day shall be al levavecha, on your heart? Shouldn't it say bil levavecha, in your heart? The reason he said that it is al levavecha, on your heart, instead of in it, in this prayer, is that sometimes you can't put something in your heart. Sometimes your heart is utterly closed. And at those times, he says, all you can do is place the words on your heart in the hope that one day when your heart cracks, the words will fall in. Living with an open heart, with an honest heart, is not in human nature. It is why we understand vulnerability as weakness instead of the courage to be perfect, like we should. And it's why, as Jews, we are constantly made to examine ourselves as we do on this very day. One last example from our tradition of why brokenness is central to who we are as humans is from the Shulchan Aruch. Literally, it means a set table, but it's a code of Jewish law from the 16th century. And it discusses the required qualities of a prayer leader, of a shaliach tzibor. It says, a shaliach tzibor must be proper. It asks, what is proper? That she should be free from sins, and that she should not have a bad reputation, even from childhood, and that she should be humble and desired by the congregation, and she should be pleasant with a sweet voice, and that she should regularly read Torah, prophets, and the writings. Now, I didn't share that with you to, make you feel that I believe all those things about myself, and that's why I should be up here. It gets to a different point in a moment. But there's a commentary on this very portion of the Shulchan Aruch in another collection of texts called the Mishnah Brura that adds, not only should the Shaliach Tzibor, the prayer leader, be learned in Torah and great in deed, but this person should also be a minimum of 30 years old. In my case, I say, it's good news for me. But why? Why 30? The rabbis teach that because by age 30, if not before, but certainly by then, her heart is broken and contrite. The leader of a service needs to have lived enough that her heart has been broken. One cannot be a prayer leader for the community unless she knows what it means to have a broken heart. Each of these texts plead with us, in the words of Brené Brown, to let yourself be seen, deeply seen, vulnerably seen, to love with whole hearts even though there is no guarantee, to practice gratitude and joy in moments of terror, asking yourself or others, can I love you this much? Can I be this fierce about this? To feel this vulnerable means we are alive. To believe that we are enough as we are. During the High Holy Days, we exercise our vulnerability through teshuvah, repentance, among many other things. But the way we do this the way we make tshuva, the way we turn, the way we seek forgiveness from others, is not through just saying, I'm sorry, though if that's all you can get to, I'll accept it. It's all right. But rather, it's through asking one another for forgiveness. And you might wonder, what is the difference between telling someone you're sorry and asking someone for forgiveness? But it's when you ask for that forgiveness from that person, if you just say, I'm sorry, you don't leave them much room to respond to you. Hopefully they'll say okay, and you might feel like you're forgiven. But if you're asking someone for forgiveness to truly forgive you, there is a moment before they respond where you are left wide open, and you are actually asking for a response to an answer to that question of, will you forgive me? The vulnerability is found in asking for forgiveness without the guarantee of being forgiven. As our actions from the past year are placed on the proverbial scale during the High Holy Days, we ask ourselves, did our acts of righteousness outweigh our moments of falling short? Did we manage to put more goodness into the world than the pain we contributed to in it? On Rosh Hashanah, it is written. On Yom Kippur, it is sealed. These words recited as part of the challenging Unatana Tokef prayer that we recited earlier. We recited during these days of awe as an attempt to shake us, to wake us up, to remind us to take down our walls, and to move beyond going through the motions into true vulnerability. Yom Kippur is the day on which we are forced to face our own mortality, our own death, as Rabbi David Wolpe explains. On Yom Kippur, we dress in white. It has connotations of purity because white shows the slightest of stains. But the deeper reason is that a robe is reminiscent of the shrouds in which we will be buried. He says, we emulate corpses on this day, not eating, not drinking, freed of the body. This will one day be our fate. When we remove ourselves from the world for a day like we do at Yom Kippur, it reminds us that one day the world will get along without us. We prepare for death to more powerfully return to life. We spend so much time not trying to be vulnerable, even though we all are. We spend so much time trying not to be afraid of being ourselves with one another, even though many of us are. In the end, if we shared our vulnerabilities, our fears would dissipate because there would be no longer anything to be afraid of. As one of the great learned scholars of our time, Rabbi Richard Levy, says regarding the confessions that we did earlier today as a community, he says, the confession on Yom Kippur is written in the plural to realize that we share vulnerability with each other. We can stand here together, whatever our ages, whatever our stages in life, and share the connection of not only our ultimate vulnerability, our mortality, but also our momentary vulnerabilities. If we can stand together and be honest about them, about those things that make us feel broken or less than, if we can show that kind of courage in front of our fellow human, then perhaps we can even find a sense of acceptance and maybe even pride in those things that make us feel broken. Even if these things stay with us for our entire lives, we are not incomplete. We do not feel as though there is something lacking from us. Our imperfections are what make us us and allow us to connect to one another when we share them. I stand here today still feeling somewhat exposed, but now I know a truth that I did not know only a few months ago. Judaism is all about vulnerability. Our fears and uncertainties today are what our tradition commands us to embrace. We may think of exposure as leaving ourselves open to pain, disappointment, or ridicule, but I challenge you today to think about this differently. Exposure, after all, is a way of letting more light in. Our imperfections are sources of reflection, connection, and action, and would allow us to bring more light to the world. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will.